Students, parents, teachers, staff, and administrators across our system. I hope we all have had a nice, relaxing break and we are now refreshed to begin a new academic year focusing on education, reading, writing, arithmetic, sports, the arts, our Catholic faith, and the all-round development, achievement, and success of each and every student at HCDSB. I would also like to welcome our new student trustees to our very first board meeting, as well as Superintendent Jack Caldera, leading special education, and Superintendent Skripek, leading math at the HCDSB. Welcome. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and will be posted on the board's YouTube channel. Trustees, in order to be recognized, please use the hand up feature in Teams to be automatically placed in queue. And trustees, please remember to turn your mics on when you speak. Also, please remember that if you speak when you're not recognized, or if you do not have the floor, your mic will be muted. Our first item, 1.1, land acknowledgement, opening prayer, our Father and national anthem. And now our staff to please start us off with the land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect 4 directions: lands,
waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All of these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you. Trustee Chua, could you please now lead us in the opening prayer, the Our Father and the national anthem?
Thank you, Chair. If everyone could please join me in the sign of our faith. Father, Son, Spirit. Lord, we pray for the students and learners for tomorrow, for the first day of school. Give them the minds that are eager to learn, and give them courage to ask good questions in confidence and to take risks, and discipline to focus them to study. We pray for quality friendships and safety in and out of our classrooms, and we pray for the kids who struggle with anxiety and fear. May they feel your perfect love surround them and give them the courage to get through each and every single day. We pray that learning is engaging and valuable and exciting. Give our students focus and direction as they prepare for what lies ahead. We say this with your prayer: Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. We pray for those who trespass against us. And if staff could play the national anthem.
True
Thank you, Trustee Chua. We move on to item 1.2, motions arising from in-camera. There was one motion from the in-camera session that will require a vote in the public session. May I have the motion on the screen, please? Thank you. I will now read the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board appoint Autism Ontario and their representative, Brian Hamlet, to the special education. Sorry. Oh, sorry. My bad. So I'll start from beginning. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board appoint Autism Ontario and their representative, Brianna Hamlet, to the Special Education Advisory Committee, SEAC, of the Halton Catholic District School Board for the period of September 2023 to November 2026. May I have a mover for this item, please? Moved by Trustee Agnew, sorry, and Trustee Powell seconds it. I shall call the vote. There's no discussion on this item. We'll take it to a recorded vote. Trustee Ohonchanada? Trustee Agnew? In favor. Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Saunders? In favor. Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Deepu?
In favor.
Trustee McGuire? Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
We have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstention, motion carries. We shall now move on to approval of the agenda. Item number 2, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda, and do trustees want any item removed from the consent agenda? The trustees, I see Trustee Carabella, you have your hand up. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to remove item 6.1.1, the minutes of the June 20th regular board meeting from the consent agenda, and also item 6.2.4, which is the open question period.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Any other trustees? Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to remove section 6.2.3, the Better Schools and Student Outcomes Act 2023.
6.2.3. Okay, any other amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, we shall move on to, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Looking for a mover, please. Trustee Carabella. Seconder, Trustee Kennedy. I'll take this to a recorded vote. Trustee Agnew. Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee Saunders. Favor. Trustee Kelly.
Oppose.
Trustee Chua.
In favor.
Trustee Deepu.
In favor.
Trustee McGuire.
Favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Powell. Trustee Kennedy.
In favor.
Trustee Ohonchanada. We have 6 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstention, motion carries. The agenda is approved as amended. Moving on to our next order of business, which is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared tonight? Seeing none, we shall move on to our next order of business, which is presentations. Item 4.1, summer school updates. We have 2 presentations tonight, and this is the first one talking about. I'm going to ask Director Klein to introduce the first presentation, which is an update. Director Klein, you have the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. There were many events during the summer that reflected the fact that we are tireless in our commitment to student learning. The presentation this evening, the first one, that will be led by Superintendent Del Sordo, is the first, and the next time we meet too, we will continue to share with trustees what we've done in other regards over the summer to ensure student achievement. So I would turn it over now to Superintendent Del Sordo to share with us the great events of this summer, and he can take that away right now.
Thank you, Director Klein, and through you, Chair. I have the distinct pleasure to really share with you the good news of what happened in the month of July in the first couple of weeks. But we all know that this incredible work and the great success was because of the team of administrators and teachers who did the work and really built those relationships with the kids and inspired the kids to do incredibly well. I'm equally honored to have with us Dr. Gino Montanari, who is the principal who oversaw really part of the school, who's also here tonight. Should we have any questions that I'm not able to answer, I could defer to him. And at the same time, I'd also like to thank principals for summer school, Marissa Monroe, Mark Ilshishin, and Sonia Ellison, who jumped in at the last moment because Amanda Morrill got ill. And so at the end of the day, one of the things that we're really proud of is the fact that we were able to build a community. And as you can see on it, we had a total of 5,459 students, and we hired 215 teachers to provide instruction in 4 of these programs run through Merton Center, and that is the secondary credit, the elementary 6 to 8, the language instruction for newcomers referred to as the LINK program, and the International and Indigenous Language Program for elementary. The next slide will show you the success of our secondary credit program. If you can see it, we had a total of 3,783 students, total of 152 instructors, and we gave out a total of 4,032 credits. You might be thinking, well, if we only had 3,783 students, how could we give more credits? Well, a number of these kids were in a co-op, and co-op is a 2-credit program because they work all day, and they started earlier and they went 2 weeks past to meet the requirements of the ministry. So that's where a number of our SHISM students take the co-op program in the summer to complete that program. If you look at their achievement level, if level 3 is the ministry expectation, you have from level 3 to 4, at least 85% of our students achieved at the ministry expectation. And then if you look at parent and student voice, this was survey questions run through the research department with Jennifer McDonald and collected. You'll notice that out of the parents who were surveyed, 78% said that they were very satisfied or satisfied with the full credit summer school program. And then 73% of the students said that they were satisfied or very satisfied. 80% of parents, respondents said that they would be enrolling their child in a summer program course like this again, if needed. 65% of the students reported that they would enroll again. 61% of the parents, respondents chose the current delivery model, which was the asynchronous e-learn model, as their preferred method of summer school delivery if the option is there in the future. And then 74% of the students said that they would prefer the current asynchronous model. If you look at the next program that we offered, which was the elementary program of 6 to 8, these are students who are functioning at a level 2. 336 students participated. We had 13 teachers. And what you'll find in the parent and the student voice here in this program is that 84% of the respondents selected satisfied or very satisfied. Though 56 preferred the current synchronous model, most others, 28%, preferred the face-to-face. Out of the 100 grade 6 and 8 student respondents, most, which is 64%, indicated satisfaction with the program, but the students showed variability regarding whether they would enroll again in the preferred delivery model, though 40% did select the synchronous model. If you then look further on, And this is the language instructions for our newcomers program, which is the LINK program. We had 233 English as a second language student program and 108 as French as a second language. And of course, we hired 6 English as a second language learner teacher, and then 3 FSL instructors. If you look at the achievement by level, we had various students from the ESL come from 40 different countries. And so, of course, the achievement level, I don't have it here, but we can always get it for you as well. And you can see the same with the French as a second language, that we had a number of students from 40 different countries. Then if we look at the international, and this is the Indigenous language program for elementary, we were shy 1 student from hitting 1,000, so we had 999. And so we had 41 teachers, and we were teaching 14 languages. And those are the languages that are also listed on here. And if you look at the student and parent voice, you can see the number of things that the parents have all really spoke highly of that program that we were able to collect through the research department. At this point, I'm incredibly happy that the program is as successful as it is, and that you can see every year it tends to get bigger and bigger. And if we're open here to have any questions, both myself and Dr. Martinari.
Thank you, Superintendent Del Soto. Trustees, do we have any questions for Superintendent Del Soto or Principal Montanari? Trustee Carabella, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, this is very successful. Thank you. And do you have like plans for next year or anything that you're missing that you think would be interesting for next year, or do you have plans in place?
Superintendent Del Soto.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Trustee Carabella. It's always exhausting to be asked, so what are you doing next? Some of the things that we are doing is myself and one of the principals of the school, we're going to be meeting to talk about what worked, what didn't work, and what's our next step, and really start thinking about, so what PD could we offer any person that's interested in teaching summer school to really start thinking about the engaging piece. In terms of course offering, we tend to offer a number of the courses all in English, the mandatory courses. That's always the student voice, so it's whatever the students choose. So we will constantly be asking kids for it. But I think moving forward, we'll be offering again the online program format.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. You have follow-up? No? I see no other trustees' hands up. So, sorry. Trustee Kennedy, I see your hand up now. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, Superintendent Del Soto, we have some great stats there on student parent voice. Do you know how they compare with previous years? Like we have some good 80% reported that they would enroll their child in a summer school like this again. How does that compare to, say, previous years? Are the numbers getting better?
Superintendent Del Soto.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thanks for the question, Trustee Kennedy. Offhand, I don't. By memory, I do. So that means to say I don't trust it. So what I do remember is that we did have a higher percentage of parents last year who preferred the model than this year, but I'm not sure if that's an accurate one or that's just a blurred memory that I have. It is accurate. It is. I am very astonished that I have an accurate memory. So yes, so it's actually going lower.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Do you have a follow-up? Thank you. So I do not see any other trustees' hands up. So congratulations and well done, Superintendent Del Soto, your team, Principal Gino Montanari, and your staff. I followed some of the wonderful work. You'd like to speak? You'd like to use the mic there? There's a mic there.
Okay. First of all, thanks, Superintendent Del Soto. I guess I have to call you, not Ed. It was with summer schools. Some of you that have more experience would appreciate the challenges that exist in a transitional year that we've had after COVID. And last year we had a huge swell because people weren't traveling. This year they decided to travel, so our numbers are lower. But having said that, I had a wonderful team as usual, and it wasn't just at the local level, but it's also at the system level. So I'd like to acknowledge Special Education Services for providing support with Diana Comito, I believe, was one of the leads in helping us coordinate support for students that needed it during summer school. I'd like to acknowledge Human Resource Services, especially Pat Donato, who helped us in the hiring and making sure it became expedient and quick enough for us to move teachers into positions as it became, because as you can imagine, we don't know who's coming into summer school until the last moment. And then we just get the floodgates are open. So Pat was instrumental, and special thanks to Human Resources for allowing her to work with us continually during this time. I want to also thank IT Services, because we had a lot of situations in which they stepped in and helped us sort things out beforehand and even during the time. And this year, I would say it was a much better year because of our experience and the expertise on things such as Power School, which is a dreaded word in our school, but nonetheless, a system that has become more and more familiar. And through IT, we've been able to kind of claim it a bit more and become more efficient. I want to also thank Research Services, especially Dr. Collmore, and especially my ex-student, Dr. McDonald, to see come through the ranks and now to assist us in doing surveys of all our programs so that we have not just our gut feeling of what's going on, but now we have data to support what we think. And we've been doing that since last year. Last but not least, our admin team under the leadership of Sonia Ellison, Andrea Basic, who's in charge of the LINK program, Eugene Anawas, who's in charge of our ILE program. We all came together to make this a wonderful venture and to assist so many students, especially students that were in need. We had one student family reach out to us to say that thanked us for doing it in this delivery format, because the child was going under therapy, radiation therapy, and was not able to attend in person. So we removed the barrier for that family, and I'm sure there were others, but I thought that was a worthy thing and a wonderful way to end the year.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work. I see two other hands up here. Actually, I wrapped up the discussion, but let's give it a shot. Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up. You were saying something.
Yes, thank you. Just heard the mention of the numbers were a little bit lower, maybe because of travel. Do we know how much lower they were versus previous? Oh, so about 10%.
Okay, let's go to Trustee Saunders and take a question there.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that having visited the Merton Center, it's very impressive. I'm just wondering, the asynchronous learning, do you see this as the learning of the future, or do you see us returning back to sort of in classroom learning? Do you have a feeling either way? And I wonder if that had something to do with maybe lower attendance this year, or just what your thoughts are on that area.
I'll outline my bias right away. I'm a face-to-face kind of learner. However, seeing what's come of COVID and the need that students continue to demonstrate through what they're selecting, you may recall that we were offering both systems at the startup just to see what the take-up was. And overwhelmingly, it became very quickly apparent to us that they were all going in the online version, and we could not substantially support financially having teachers with 10 or 12 students in the class, and we were getting those numbers online. So I seem to think that this will continue until maybe the pendulum will swing the other way, but right now the pendulum seems to be going in that direction, and we have to support what our students are asking of us and what our parent community is telling us. So we have had 0 complaints. I've been on the phones throughout the summer. I just only had 2 weeks off, but I was there constantly. And in terms of situations of where students were unhappy, we had one student because of a mark. We addressed that too. So overall, it was a very, very successful year for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Principal Gino Montinari and Superintendent Del Soto, for your presentation. I think Principal Gino needs some vacation now. It's just 2 weeks off. Thank you so much for your presentation. We now move on to our next presentation, which is an update. Our next update on back to school. Director Klein, please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. And I hate following Gino, and I really don't like following M, but such is life. When we set the agenda for this evening, I'd spoken with Chair Duarte and Vice Chair Agnew, and we were talking about what might be topical for trustees and parents as we begin the school year. And indeed, there's a lot we could talk about when we discuss, you know, the beginning of a new school year, the beginning of what we would hope is a year that we have extricated ourselves further and further from COVID and all the chaos that imposed on all of us in every part of education. So there really are a couple of things that I think we want to highlight in the report today. So I apologize because no doubt these could be more exhaustive, but I think these are ones that might be top of mind for some of our trustees and certainly for some parents. And I'm clicking. Everything is slow today. One is class composition, or classes themselves that come to the fore the week before school starts, and then students learn what class they're in, where they are, who's in their class, and parents learn the same, and there might be some questions or concerns around that. The professional activity day that we had most recently, meaning today, a few hours ago it ended, and certainly the PD day that we had, or PA day today, and moving forward, and how that's, I guess, expectations around that. And then student transportation. Many of our students get to schools by walking or by bus or other modes. But transportation sometimes is, I think, something that questions will arise for trustees in the early days of school, and for families as well. So that's why we kind of landed on those. And I'm going to rely on a couple of the superintendents to color in the lines here. Superintendent Donalfo has worked very hard in terms of staffing and class organization, and that is an ongoing job, because you're looking at the number of students in the number of schools, and then you have to ensure that they're divided up according to regulations, and then you have the right number of staff who are there for them. And it sounds like a fairly straightforward math problem, but it isn't always that easy, because the numbers are shifting and moving. And so I would rely on her for a considerable portion of that, and to help out in terms of questions. And certainly some of the parameters around that have changed as well. The professional activity day, Superintendent Donalfo, again, is the superintendent who was given the responsibility to help organize the school year calendar. And so that job starts depending on when we get the first memo from the Ministry of Education. Ideally, that's around Christmas. This year it was much later, and much later than we would have wanted it, in late spring, in fact. But things don't really change over the years in terms of number of days and the parameters around them. And the PA days are ones that she would be able to speak to, I think, as well. Student transportation, you know, we are part of a consortium, and you know that the consortium that we work with our coterminous board is led by a committee of people, and really the lead person on that for our board is Superintendent Lofts. So I'm going to ask them to chime in as well, but we'll start with class composition. Some of you might be aware that there are, in terms of the rules around this, the rules of of how we divide up schools and classes, some of the parameters are known as, we call caps. And so there are, you might have heard hard caps or soft caps. You might have heard the term breaking the cap or piercing the cap. And there's certain timelines around that as well. And the ministry has rationale for this. The ministry wants to make sure that monies are used to good effect, and that there's not games being played when it comes to school boards and money. Not that that would ever happen here, but that certainly has happened, I'm sure, in the past at other boards. So we have caps for our classes. You've heard of the 20-to-1 cap in primary and 24-to-1. And those caps are there to help us in junior. They are there to help us create our classes. There is wiggle room for school boards, but that wiggle room is only 10%. And in the end, school boards have to show to the Ministry of Education that when the pie is divided, that they are in compliance, meaning they would have 10% or less would be breaking the cap on that. And that really has parameters around it in terms of every school, because we can't force students to move schools. So you're still confined to a geographic area of a school itself. And some of those schools have certain programs. And so you've got another added variable within that as well. I say that to, I know you understand that, but I think it serves as a good reminder to see what we're dealing with when it comes to the end result, which is a parent looking at, okay, here's the class, it's Mr. and Miss so-and-so, and sooner than later, a student will know, who's in their class. And for some reasons and sometimes that might be something that's hard to adjust to. And that parents, and I'm a parent too, and I've had 3 kids go through schools, and sometimes I know that the reactions aren't what we'd want. More often than not, they're very positive. The role of staff in this is important. When principals work at creating the classes in the spring of the year, they, like any planning, they plan and then they, of course, are fully at ease with the fact that our best plans are often thrown off by losing students, gaining students. And so they're very flexible with that regard. But they have a sense of what they want to do as they enter the summer. And of course, if they have 3 or 4 people arrive last Friday, then they would be prepared to shift. And those numbers are all available to us here to the board. Nancy pours over them as she has a lot over the last few days. And then we see what those tell us in terms of the classes and the staffing. Because of those, the principal who has a key role in this in terms of making up classes would of course be relying on teachers and other staff to help in terms of how we make up the classes. The considerations would be myriad, really. But if I could sort of give some overlapping considerations, student needs are key. So student needs, schools would look at the needs of their learners in terms of reading skills and their arithmetic skills, needs in terms of friendships, of course, and maybe sometimes students who maybe are not to be with other students for a variety of reasons. Demographics, even something as fairly straightforward as trying to have some balance in terms of girls and boys in a class would be something that's considered. Those are overview ones, but really there's many of them. We have many blended families. Sometimes there's considerations. Someone might want to ensure that that's considered. When it comes to students who are siblings, sometimes that's a consideration as well. And those are all part of the moving set of variables that principals consider when they make these decisions. And then on top of that, you have, okay, we've got to make sure we're within the caps. And when we're looking at green lighting those classes, we're trying to be as prudent as possible, because this is, if the more we break the cap, the less flexibility we have. And then when all is said and done, we have decisions that are made, and decisions are made as a team here. They are made through really the key role of Nancy. Also, Aaron plays a big role in this. And of course, all of our superintendents have their ear to the ground in terms of connecting with schools to see, can we move this one person? Is it that important that we have this? And every one of those conversations is different. I'm not sure if Nancy, if you want to add any more to that in terms of the consideration, but I thought for trustees who like principals and teachers and superintendents and directors, they might get phone calls, people who are concerned. Some of you might remember being concerned sometimes, or very happy about the way the classes unfolded. I think it is important just to be aware that there's a lot of moving parts. And sometimes it's not as easy as, can we just move so-and-so to this class? Because there's been a lot of thought and work around that leading into it. Superintendent Dinolfo, I'm not sure if I've done that any justice, or is there something you want to add to it?
You absolutely did justice. What I also would share around what we do with the classes that when we do them in the spring, the staff are very involved in really trying to balance off needs of the students, like Director Klein has shared, but also knowing the staff complement. So for example, if the student was in a combined grade 1 year, give them an opportunity to be in a straight class, especially in our smaller schools that have a variety of combined classes. So that's a lot of questions that will come up. Why is my child in a combined class? The other thing that we have to remember that we take on a lot of new registrations through the summer. Okay, so up to 500. So we've made these class lists at the end of June, and that's why this last week it was really important that the staff had an opportunity to review those class lists. But again, if students are new to the school, the staff don't really know those students. So it's fitting those students into what we knew about the other students that were at the school that adds to that sort of setup of what we're doing. Okay, so just keep in mind, its primary is 20-1 for grades 1 to 3 with a hard cap of 23. Okay, grade 4 to 8, it's 24.5 as an average across the board. And then we have kindergarten. Okay, and kindergarten, they can go up to 30 and 10% can be over 30. Okay, that's a high number, which we haven't done in many years because of all the growth that we had. But with declining enrollment and not seeing those kindergarten numbers come back since COVID, that's a number we have to be really aware of. And again, the size of our school. So depending on the size of the school, that's going to impact those ratios.
So I guess sort of to reiterate, I was just thinking as Nancy was describing those parameters, that it is as much an art as it is a science when these classes are being made. And even the more I think about the variables, the more that come to mind. Partly principals do these things too, looking at maybe the gifts and the skills of their staff as well. Sometimes you might have a brand new teacher do a grade and that impacts the thought around it. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 teachers who work so well together they could be on a hockey line, and so you can arrange classes to complement or to reflect the certain skill set of those teachers. But you couldn't do that with another set or another school or another set of students. It's really part of the wonderful kind of creative opportunity that principals have. It is a little daunting, but every year it's a different set, a different group with a different set of teachers. So, and those students are continually maturing and sometimes having different challenges in their own lives. And so you need to respond to that. I just wanted to remind people about that important set of variables around which this team of professionals makes these decisions. And it's not to say that when a parent calls and talks about another shift in the lives of her son or daughter, that that's not also important too. So I think those are also things that schools and staffs listen to, but it has to be within that conversation of all these little things that constrict it as well. I'll move on. There might be more questions regarding that, but I'll move on to the next section as well. The PA Day, which we just celebrated today, and I would say most boards that I'm aware of in Ontario had their first professional activity day either today, I think, or last week. The reason for that, I think, is something, a lesson really through COVID, which was to buckle down and try and prepare for what is totally unpredictable school in the year to come. That's not to say that we have totally unpredictable school coming up. That is certainly, I think, a legacy of COVID was to take, over the years, we've maybe had 2 or 3 PA days before school started. And we did the same thing this year as well. So on July 28th, the Ministry of Education introduced these changes. Again, not the best timing in schools to have fairly significant documents dropped on boards at that point. Maybe Gino wasn't on holiday that day, but I think many other people were on holiday that day. And that was Regulation 304, which is the school year calendar. That regulation has been around since time immemorial. It's just a key part of it. And that's important to note too. The professional activity days have been around since all of us were children in schools as well. And sometimes they've added them. When I began teaching, there was, I think, 1 or 2 more PA days, and they restricted them So there's no rule to how many that a system would have. And then within each of those, there's certain designations around what has to be done on them. And that's been the case for many years as well. And often they reflect things that come up in terms of, certainly with COVID, there was much more of an emphasis on health and safety. When new curricula are put into effect, often that has to be something that's a focus. And that Regulation 304 will delineate that. Over the years, there's been centralized agreements with different teachers' unions, and that has also sometimes impacted it as well. And so, again, going back to the moving parts, those are things that we as a board, and I would, again, tip my hat to Superintendent Dinolfo, in concert with our with program and special education and principals, have worked to try and ensure that we meet the needs of. So sort of an 8th inning shift in some of this on July 28th, which wasn't radical, it was just shifting some of the parameters of it. I think another thing we'd want to herald here was the work that Nancy did and others did to, through August, respond so that we could be ready for today, not just in terms of the content, but in the communication of it, because you'll know there was certain rules around how things had to be communicated, as they were in other years as well. So in accordance with these changes, not only for this PA Day today, but the future ones as well, families will receive a detailed summary of the activities scheduled for each PA Day, 14 days ahead of the PA Day. Just to note that that was always part of Regulation 304 and a PPM that went along with it. That was a responsibility I had at a previous board. So all boards had to do that before. I think this just tightens up in terms of the timelines and the accountability around it and reporting back to the ministry. But it really always was one. And this information is posted on our website. I have a link here. I'm not going to try it. This was sent to trustees, but I don't want to, I'm a little afraid of how my computer might react. But you'll recall that on our website, you can see that it was listed in terms of in elementary, this is what we're doing in the morning, this is what we're doing in the afternoon, this is whom it will be led by. And I would have to, again, give, I think, credit where credit's due, because in this regard, really, principals and vice principals really led the charge in each of our schools. And that was part of the work we did last week with them to give them all the PowerPoints, all the links, and all the resources they need to kind of structure the conversations over today, because there was a lot to dig into, but the people who did that. And I think the link to the website also would connect to not just the topics, but some of the key documents that were part of today's work as well. Nancy, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Director Klein. Just also, so thank you to Strategic Communications who set up all the information. So it's one spot on the school website. So it goes under school year calendar, and then it's the link, and it'll talk about all the things that are happening on a PA Day. So our next PA Day, which is our Faith Day in October, that is now just pending. Okay, so we have to post on September 22nd what our PA Day for Faith Day is going to be. That, just so you have that information, it's individually school run after staff have been trained at the school level by Jillian Federico, because it's on our Faith Day. So faith development for our staff. But each school also has a spot on their website where they post their actual agenda for that day, what they're doing on the PA Day. That is something that we've done in Halton Catholic for many years. And so that will continue. But what's now is it's the same spot under school year calendar. There's a link to the PAD activities. So parents will have that.
And before I move on to the next one, I'll just say that the professional development of teachers is something that teachers themselves take seriously, and not just teachers, our early childhood educators and other professionals that are in our schools. They work hard on their own with additional qualification courses, other courses, reading and work that they do to ensure that their skills are honed. And that is important for them individually, but it's also important that, and this is why we have PA days, that we're also developing our skills in concert So if I'm a grade 1 teacher, it's really important for me to know and work with grade 2 teachers and the kindergarten teacher, because these are all our children, and to work on my own is one thing, but I'm much richer if I'm working with others. And that power of growth as a professional is really, I think, strengthened and fortified when I'm working with others. And that's one of the reasons why we do it. It's to have alignment. It's to have a continuity. It's to know if I'm a principal of school A, that teachers in school B or C, if they were to transfer over to my school, that there's been some common thread of professional development as well for all of them. Student transportation is for many of our students very important. And when we have the start of the year, it always makes me worry a little bit. I say a few extra prayers, because particularly with the younger students, when they're getting on a bus, there might be difficulty getting off the bus at the end of the day. And that happens very rarely, but it has happened in my experience, where there'll be some 3.5-year-old asleep in the back of a bus, and some kind bus driver will get them off of that bus. We do know with so many buses going around the Halton region, and we have driven the roads of Halton region, we do know that safety is of great importance there as well. But the role of transportation to ensure that our students get to and from school safely is extremely important. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Lofts, because I think there's some, well, I'll just say good news in terms of some of the things that we've known over the last year have been some pressure points on student transportation. So I'll ask him to highlight those. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Klein. Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone back. Director Klein is correct. We do have some good news. All our students, and I will preface by saying this, in the past, all our students, we had bus drivers for all our students in the past. Where we've seen a real improvement this year is the number of open routes. You say, well, what's an open route? An open route means we'll still have coverage for our students. There'll still be a bus driver there, but it wasn't a permanent driver. So we'll be using, the companies use spare drivers for open routes. So to put it in perspective, in 21-22, we had 32 open routes at the start of school. Last year, we had 25. This year, we have 10. So again, we're still going to have the coverage. There's still going to be a bus, but it won't be a permanent driver driving the bus for 10 of our 458 or so routes. So really looking at the number of open routes as a percentage of our number of routes, it was about 7% open in 21-22, 5.25% open in 22-23, and this year it's 2% open. So it's a real good improvement this year. So I'm not going to say there won't be delays, because there will be. There's always delays those first few weeks, but it's definitely, we've seen a lot of work that went into it, and we'll have coverage. So I'm very pleased to report that back to everybody here tonight. So I know busing is a big concern for everyone around this table. So it's some good news. So.
Excuse me. This is the opportunity, if you have any questions, again, we look back over the topic of classes and composition and how that's done, and caps and everything around them, and how that could come up as a concern or focal point for questions. Again, the PA day and PA days, and then the final topic, of course, was busing. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them and help.
Thank you, Director Klein. We have a speakers list here. First on speakers list is Vice Chair Agnew. You have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your first back to school report of the year. Just a question about, and I know that I asked this year over year, but I'm asking again. So with respect to when students are given their timetables or their schedules specific to secondary, there's not a lot of time, and they're given those on, most often they're getting those on a Friday before the long weekend. The Monday, or today is a PA day. They're going to school tomorrow. And I understand, and I know that this is explained every year, that we sort of need up until the last minute to make some of these changes, but I do struggle with them being given a schedule at 3 p.m. on a Friday before a long weekend, and then having to, you know, there's no one to reconcile that with until sort of the first few days of school. And I just wonder why we give it so late. I know that our coterminous board does give it out a week earlier, and I'm just wondering if that's something that we're going to consider moving forward, if it's always going to be this way, and why we do it that way.
Director Klein?
Thank you, Chair. And Trustee Agnew, that certainly would be a goal for us, is to have something in the hands of parents and students earlier. And 3 o'clock on Friday was certainly not the target that we had. The fact that coterminous board is earlier than us isn't something that well, I'm happy for them, but certainly something for me makes me think that we could do better in that. I'm looking at Superintendent D'Onofrio, because this was a conversation, and actually was a conversation that started in June in terms of partly the deadline, but maybe she could give us a sense of how things unfolded and what were the expectations around that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Agnew. So the plan with the schedules was that we were doing it for 9 o'clock. We wanted them to be out at 9 o'clock. But once we had all the additional registrations that came in through the summer for secondary, which is a large number, and that is because the elementary schools within Halton Catholic, we know which students are coming to us. But what happens in the summer are all the students that are coming from the public board who decide to come to Halton Catholic, they register at the last minute. Okay, some through the summer with our online, some not until like last week. So as this guidance secretaries and all of them are receiving those students, they are now trying to fit those students into classes. And we are doing a tight staffing this year because of the redundancy that we had last year. So we're cautious with what we're doing. And so the secondary schools tried for the 9 o'clock. That's where they wanted them to go on Friday, but they were really still doing some of the staffing and scheduling for students because they wanted to make sure everybody had a schedule. And the schedules aren't perfect. And this is why we're using this week to align everything and confirm the number of students that we have in each of our high schools. Okay, so the feedback is important, and we can take that and hopefully do better next year.
Thank you. Follow up.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Superintendent D'Onofrio. And these are, you know, I bring this forward because these are questions I get, and I do get them at 4 p.m. on the Friday, or whenever they go out, even the Friday itself. I mean, and, you know, listen, I get it. There's a lot going on. Our guidance counselors are working really hard to make sure that these things are happening, but it's a lot of stress. These students are getting them, again, the day before the long weekend. There's an inability for them to connect with anybody on that first day of school because it's typically a PA day. And then there's a lot going on this week. And so, you know, and very rarely do I compare us to our coterminous board, and you know that. But it is difficult when I do have parents say to me, you know, Nelson High School is getting theirs a week before. Is there a reason why we can't do the same? And so just to bring that forward, and I appreciate the feedback, and that is something you can take back, and maybe we can shave off a couple of days. But we know what that anxiety is like. And you know, I think just having the ability to have it a little bit early I just do think it gives students a little bit more time to sort of prep and get their head around some of those scheduling pieces. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Up next is, sorry,
thanks. I see Superintendent Cordero put the famous light on, so I'll turn it over to him. He might be able to add to that.
Thank you, Director. Assist with respect to the differences between the coterminous board and ourselves. We need to keep in mind that many of our schools, particularly those in the Milton community, sometimes get up to 40% of their student population in secondary from the public school system. The public school system doesn't necessarily, our coterminous board doesn't inherit those large sizes of students from our system crossing over to theirs. So you take a school like Bishop Redding, where there are 700 grade 9s, and maybe 300 or 350 come from the public school system. That's a significant number of students that may be added during the summer that our coterminous board doesn't have to address.
Thank you. Up next is Trustee Saunders. You have your hand up. Your floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Director Klein, thanks for the good news. I'm wondering, considering, I guess, all the discussions we had in June, you know, about budget cuts and redundancies and surpluses, do you have sort of an idea right now where we landed in terms of how many teachers, did we lose any teachers? And I recall one of the big issues was not backfilling teachers that had retired. So I'm wondering if you sort of have some sort of ballpark numbers for us, and then also what the impact is on the students per teacher ratio, because I have got emails saying that I think at the end of last year, some of the classes are telling me we're 28 to 1, 30 to 1. So I think there'll be a concern that this will maybe get worse. So I'm just wondering if you're in a position to sort of give us some numbers. And I understand that the high schools have had a dramatic increase, but whereas the elementary schools, we've lost quite a few students. So I know there's a lot of questions here, but if you've got anything to share with us, I'd appreciate that.
Director Klein.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Trustee Saunders, for that. I'm looking at Superintendent Oldman, and this is one that's sort of got a concerted effort on it, because it does fall under what Superintendent Donalfo and Superintendent Lofts also are responsible for. But I like the question about, when we last tuned in the end of June, here was the conversation, how are things now? And I recognize, tomorrow is when they're actually going to be in there, so I don't want to, so let's just say a prayer around that, but let's look at the numbers as they are right now. And I'll start with Superintendent Oldman.
Thank you, Director Klein, through you, Chair. And in terms of update, obviously this is a critical week, as Superintendent Donalfa had noted. In terms of an enrollment count, we do a check on that. There are a number of processes that really only can occur once a student has landed in one of our buildings. And that is a critical process as it relates to demitting students who are being requested, and the OSR request that comes through that. That's their own record that follows them. So this will be a critical week, but in terms of, we are still in a state of redundancy in both of our panels with our teaching staff. We sit at around 99 redundant elementary teachers and 4 redundant secondary teachers. Obviously, the criticality that is this week, as we just noted, will inform many of our class size regulation requirements in terms of primary class size, and a lot of reporting that we have to go into the ministry. And we will staff, as we always do, in compliance with those regulations, and tied in very tightly to our funded GSNs, which is enrollment driven.
Just looking here, I'm not sure if Superintendent Donalfo or Lofts has or wishes to add anything to that.
Through the Chair, thank you, Director Klein. Just a little bit to add, we're going to be doing a physical count, as Superintendent Oldman mentioned. We need to see the students in the class. It looks like it is going in a positive direction right now, Trustee Saunders. But again, we need to have that first week or so of school to see where we land, where students land.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, this is a point of order. Can you state
your point of order?
It's about a motion. No, I'm wondering, is that a point of order? Like, should we put a motion in to get some feedback once they have these numbers?
So a point of order is not a motion. A point of order is when a process, a policy, or a bylaw is broken.
Okay.
And
so I'm asking for a point of.
What do you want to do?
Well, I wonder if we could put a motion.
So motions are put in different ways. Notice of motion, which is put before a meeting, or you can put a notice of motion not at a presentation. You can put a notice of motion in a report. Let me just check that.
Okay.
It's been some time since I've read that.
Excuse me, Chair.
Sorry, Director Klein.
Yep. Chair and Trustee Saunders, more than happy to commit to updates.
Yep.
So we meet 2 weeks from now, update then. And I think probably, for the dust to settle, let's say into October would make sense, right? As we head toward Thanksgiving, so we can have an update, and an update. Does that help?
Yeah.
That way it's not.
And my interest is that we had all this discussion about X number of teachers had to be let go or reassigned or something. And I just want to get some comfort that we didn't actually let go a lot of teachers, that we were backfilling long-term occasionals, just sort of get an idea where we fell on that. Like, did we actually have teachers leave, or were we not able to extend contracts? So I'm just interested in that, because as you recall, this was a big issue, and we had, many late hours discussing this. So I'd like to know where we landed, it specifically as possible.
Okay, so let me get back to Trustee Saunders' point of clarification. So you cannot put a notice of motion under presentation. This is a presentation item. You can put a notice of motion for a delegation information item or a staff report. So if you want to put a notice of motion, it will have to be at the next board meeting, or any of the other locations that we talked about.
I'll be happy to work with you on that.
Sure. Thank you so much. So you have had your first question. Do you have a follow-up question?
I did have a quick question about transportation and the routes. Are they available? Do we know what routes have been established? Because as you know, we've had long discussions about my area has this expansive north that's growing all the time, and where the buses are, and I get calls from people all the time asking me about that. So can you refer me to a place where I could see that? And to remind you, the town of Oakville has also engaged me to say, are there something we can do about that?
I'll turn over to Superintendent Lofts.
Superintendent Lofts, go ahead.
Thank you. And through Mr. Chair to Trustee Saunders. Yes, there's Halton Bus. Trustee Saunders is a website. Halton Bus is where that's our consortium where both boards have. So it's Halton Bus and it's on there. So as far as the parents and notification, they do have all the notifications. Any parent that needs busing will be on there. They would have been instructed to go to this area to get their routes and such. Unfortunately, my son is now graduated, so I don't have a child in the system anymore. But when I did, I know that you could even sign up for notifications if the bus is late or whatnot. So it was kind of handy. So it is a good site to go to for everyone, our parents that are watching as well. So it's Halton Bus, and it's all on there.
Thank you. On the speakers list, we have up next Trustee Murphy. Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. And through you, Mr. Chair, my question is regarding students, or more specifically parents in elementary school, obtaining teacher and classroom information. And my question is, when did we decide to move from using an OEN or something like that to now using PowerSchool email login and password? And I ask this because many parents were spending a lot of Friday digging up that information from agendas that have been thrown in the garbage, or little kids in primary who just didn't have that information and parents had never recorded it, right? So I just want to know when that decision had been made and what's the rationale behind it.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. I think the first part of your question was addressed a little bit, but I'll pass this to Director Klein.
So I'm looking at my colleagues here. So the question was when did we make that switch, right, and why? So I will look at someone with great confidence, and that's Superintendent D'Onofrio, who will give us a clear, unequivocal answer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Klein. And I'm going to ask Andrew Swindon to also help with this. So we switched last year, and the reason being is the OEN number of our students is a confidential and it's a privacy concern. That is why we can no longer use that as the access point for parents to access their class placement. So we set up a process, and I have heard about some of the questions parents have, but we communicated this out to parents last year. Okay, so throughout last year for accessing the first term progress report, term 1 report card, and the year-end report card, it's the same process. So we didn't change it. And then the class placement is done in the same manner. On the school websites where we have about the school placement and going there, it gives the parents that instruction. That communication was shared with parents in June. Okay, so that process was, and then last week we notified the parents, I believe it was the day before, that about their child's class placement, that they could receive it at 11 o'clock a.m. on Friday. And again, the instructions are right there for the parents. I do agree that sometimes the parents may not have the student's Office 365 login account, but it even describes that on the website. It's a pretty standard process. Student's first name, last name, at HCDSB, like it's there. It's right there laid out for parents. But again, it's not something the parents are looking for, and there's so much like anxiety and want those lists that they may have forgotten. Okay, and it's okay, because even the parents, there's a mechanism if they don't have it that they could reach out to IT, and then IT services was responding to the parents on Friday about that. Ms. Swindon, I don't know if there's anything else to add with regards to that.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think you've covered it all, Superintendent D'Onofrio. The only other thing I would add is we sent an email June 27th to parents, letting them know that once again, this would be the process for being able to access the class list. I think my takeaway, because we received a lot of emails as well, I will say over 100 of parents that were scrambling, didn't have the information. And, you know, the email in June did suggest that if they don't know their child's login information, that they check with the school before the summer begins, because otherwise it's difficult to reach the school. I think maybe next year the takeaway is send it a little bit earlier. I think that last week of school, everybody's mind is, maybe just, getting to the finish line and it may have been missed by some parents. That's the only recommendation I would make is, we don't have that information here. Even if they know the email address, if they don't have the password, we can't help them with that at the board level here. So maybe next year we, in consultation with Superintendent Donofrio, we send out this reminder email earlier so that parents have the information and they keep it before they begin the summer.
Thank you. Trustee Murphy, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up. So in regards to, you had mentioned the OEN is confidential. So you had mentioned that it was not used to access report cards since last year. So moving forward, are we no longer going to be, parents will no longer be using the OEN at all to access anything such as report cards, etc.?
Superintendent Dinolfo or Ms. Sinden?
We'll have to take that back because it's my recollection that they do require the OEN to access the report card. I think the only thing different was the class list had to be done through Power School, but we can take that back and confirm.
Okay, thank you. We shall now move on down the speakers list. Up next is Trustee Ohanchinada. You have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Klein, who may delegate this to Superintendent Lofts since it's about the consortium. I just had a question and I needed to ask the question that, is there any appetite or any future moving forward about reviewing the boundaries in certain locations? Some locations don't have busing. So I'm just wondering if there's any appetite for that, Director Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Trustee Horn-Sonota. Right now, just so everyone knows as well, so our elementary students, any student over 1.6 kilometers will be bused on the elementary panel. On the secondary panel, it's 3.2 kilometers or 1.6 kilometers to the bus stop. So that's kind of the parameter for the secondary system or panel. So as any changes, I don't see any on the horizon to lower that. There is an obvious cost if we were to lower, a significant cost. So the more we go, the more we lower it, it does change the cost. I do know that it was, and I can't remember, distance was before, I believe it was 4 kilometers for secondary panel. You had to be 4 kilometers or greater to get a bus, and that was reduced probably about 7 or 8 years ago down to 3.2, which is kind of the standard around the area as well. Most boards are 3.2 for transportation on the secondary panel. The cost obviously would go up significantly if we lower that even more. And we are in a deficit in the transportation envelope right now. So.
Perfect. That's my answer. Thank you.
Any follow-up, Trustee Ohanchinada? No?
No, thank you.
Up next is Trustee Kennedy. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering regarding school attendance. I know it's early, it's tomorrow, but maybe it'll be October. I think you mentioned before, sorry, Superintendent Lofts, about redo the numbers. Do we have any preliminary numbers? Like, I heard someone mention about kindergartens short, like going lower and high school going higher. Do we have anything there? Like, was it roughly what you thought when you did the budget in June?
Superintendent Lofts, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Trustee Kennedy. Right now, preliminary, we're looking good on both panels for how we estimated back in June. Secondary does appear right now, and I don't want to say it yet until we get the students in school, right? Because that's the concern that you can have. You can say that where we're going to be at. We don't really know until we actually have the students in the schools. But as it stands right now, it's looking positive. And then we'll get more information for you at the next board meeting when we kind of have the kids or the students in the classrooms.
Trustee Kennedy, your follow-up?
Also heard about class sizes for elementary, 20 to 1 for 1 to 3, grades 1 to 3. What's I don't think, maybe I missed it, secondary. What is that ratio? And what's in addition, I heard something about breaking caps. So I think that heard 10% over. Is there any reason we can can we break a cap for any reason whatsoever, or is there specific reasons we can break a cap? Like go up to the cap or 3%?
Superintendent Lofts.
So maybe I'll start with the first one, Trustee Kennedy, just on with the secondary. Secondary average is 23 to 1. So that's an average over this system. As far as the caps go and such, maybe if I can hand it over to Superintendent Donofrio, help me a little bit more on that side.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Kennedy, so elementary, it's a hard cap. It's for grades 1 to 3. We cannot go over 23 to 1. And grade 3-4, if we have a 3-4 combined split, it can't go over 23-1 as well. So that's a hard cap. So that's some of the work that we have to be mindful of this week. Friday, we're going to do the count to match it up with what we have, like bums on seats to what we have in Power School. And that's where we have to align the class size statistic report for the ministry. What's changed this year, and prior to COVID, we used to have to submit that report to the ministry by September 15th. The requirement has been extended to October 31st. So we actually have until October 31st to right size the organization in elementary. Okay, 24.5 for junior intermediate is a board average. So you will have classes that could be 29, 30, 31, okay? Some of our smaller schools, depending on how the school, as together with their staff, together with the community, sometimes they will keep a grade 7 class or grade 8 class, all the students together and make it a class of 31, not to make it a combined class. So it really is specific to that school, okay? But there's no hard cap for junior intermediate. And the other hard cap that we have is kindergarten. So only 10% of the classes can be over 30, but can go up to 32 in kindergarten.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy, you have follow-up?
Yeah, just wondering, so kindergarten seems to be the one that maybe got a little bit of decline. Do we have a lot of those classes at cap? Just curious, like, are we top of the range?
Superintendent Dinopo.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Kennedy, we're monitoring those numbers. That's what the work we need to do, because if any grade that sometimes the students don't come this week, it's sometimes kindergarten. With that declining number of kindergarten, that's what's changed for Halton Catholic since COVID. Right now, a number might be close to 32. We'll make it, once we get the numbers, we'll balance it off. Okay, so we may split those classes. Right? If we can do that, we will. Sometimes it makes sense to keep them together because then they have a DEC. A kindergarten class, a 15 doesn't have a DEC. Over 15 has a DEC. So then there's 2 educators in the classroom with the students.
Thank you, Superintendent Dinolfo. I shall now move on to our next speaker, which is, sorry, Trustee. You had 2 questions already. I'll put you back in the queue if you like. We have speakers who have not spoken yet. So I shall move on to Trustee Maguire. You have the floor, Trustee Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to thank Director Klein for this presentation. It was really great to see for back to school. My question is just regarding courses for secondary students, specifically the availability of courses. I know that some students sometimes have to face course cancellations, sometimes maybe due to being small class sizes or not enough teachers. And this can sometimes impact a student's ability to pursue a certain pathway or to engage in certain types of learning. So I was wondering if there's any ways that the board is able to address this issue, and how might we go about that? Thank you.
Director Klein?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to ask for Superintendent Dinolfo to weigh in on this. Certainly the work is work that is concerted, so we would, guidance counselors and staff at the high school are important in terms of that conversation around what is preferred or what is necessary or what can work in terms of one's path. And those are sometimes 3 different conversations. What I'd really like, or what is available to me, or what can work in the sense of numbers that might not be advantageous. So that's first of all very important to know that conversation is a conversation that's individualized to ensure that even though we might not have the option that it is preferred by someone, that we can look for alternatives. The second thing I think would be to say that has to be a conversation that principals and leaders of schools have with their staff as well. Because in secondary, of course, it's not like elementary in the sense of you have to have courses that are available, and those you have to have a specific teacher who has the ability to teach that. So we don't have subject dependent teachers except for French in elementary, but in high schools, if you need a physics teacher, then we need someone who has the credentials to teach physics. And that also is something that is a variable and a factor. But I'll look to Superintendent Dinolfo to to see if she can add to that response. It's a good question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Klein, and thank you for the question. I'm going to start this, and then I'm going to ask my colleagues who have more experience in secondary with some of this. One of the things that we have since, because of COVID and some of the new course offerings through e-learning that we're able to offer at secondary. So for example, if there was not enough students to run a course, and that's some of the work that the guidance counselors have been doing this week, is matching a student's timetable to get a credit of something that maybe the school can't offer, but they can offer it through an e-learning course, because we have an opportunity through a consortium of school boards to where we have some of our teachers teaching other school boards' children. Some of our children can go to their board. So they're still doing it in their school day. It's those e-learning courses. So that's one piece. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Kroll, and then maybe Superintendent Cordero or Superintendent Del Sordo might be able to add to that.
Sure, certainly. Good evening, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair. Those are good questions that guidance counselors will. Those are questions that guidance counselors will definitely work on with students. So when students are using my blueprint and trying to figure out where do I want to end up, right? How can we help make sure they have the prerequisites to get there? So if the day school can't offer it, Superintendent Alpha said, for example, that might be a course we run through e-learning. We also have opportunities through night school and through summer school to offer courses. Like an example might be something like a college level math or physics. So in a smaller school, you might not have enough students to run that course in the school. But then as a board, we have a responsibility to look for what are other ways in which we can offer those courses so that students can take them. And so that's where the work of like all our alternative education, night school, summer school, so the e-learning pieces are there to support students, because we would never want a student to be in a situation where they can't get to their pathway because we can't offer a course for them. I hope that helps.
Trustee McGuire, do you have a follow-up question? So you get an opportunity for two questions, you know, when I address. So that's okay. I can, if you don't have any question, I'll come back to you later. Okay, so just so that you're new. Up next is Trustee Murphy. Your question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-up about busing, and my question was, you mentioned that secondary school students qualify if they are 3.2 kilometers or greater. So my question is, if it's an area where they don't qualify because of the distance and also there's no option for public transport, does that get them bumped up in terms of priority for a courtesy seat, or do they have any other recourse at all?
Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair, to Trustee Murphy. Quick answer, no. So here, I guess the question is if they're under 3.2 kilometers, but there's no public transportation?
They don't qualify for the school bus and there's no public transport in that particular area that would cover them. What's their recourse if they don't get any priority for a courtesy seat?
To you, Mr. Chair.
Superintendent Lofts.
It's 3.2 kilometers being the walk distance. So if you're under that 3.2 kilometers, that would be the walk distance for the student.
There's no, they have to get a ride, Uber.
So just to clarify there, so the courtesy sitting, Superintendent Lofts, when do principals have the ability to allocate those seats?
Yes, thank you, through Mr. Chair. So we tried it this year. Looks like it was some good success. So we were trying this year to change the courtesy seating so that get parents would know at the start of school if they possibly for courtesy seating or not. So we did all that. All the information went out over the summer. So that was good. The next round, to further to what Chair Duarte said, or questioned, was in October. So let's say that there's space on a bus in October and there's another request for courtesy seating. The school principal can go and put that forth to HST or HSTS. So that is a possibility still for courtesy seating. So I took the approach that there was no courtesy was exhausted, but there still is that opportunity for courtesy seating or to ask for courtesy seating to see if it's applicable.
Follow up?
Yeah, just so the first thing that a parent should do is to contact the principal, correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Thank you, Trustee Murphy. Up next, Trustee Kennedy, you have the floor.
Thanks. Just want to follow up to some comments earlier about mentioning about a responsibility to offer classes, getting students through the pathway. It was Superintendent Kroll. IB Economics for grade 11 for at St. Thomas Aquinas. Do we know if that course was offered? I know there was some talk that it might not be available. Did we end up getting that course offered?
Superintendent Kroll.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the information for you. I can bring it for a further meeting, but I don't have it at this time.
Director Klein.
No, I don't have an answer on that one as well. I don't know what the numbers shook down to be at this point. I think that was what was being waited for. I'm not sure if anybody else has an answer to that.
Superintendent Dinolfo, Superintendent Cordero.
Yeah, I can share with you as the former superintendent of family schools, need for IB, that those sections weren't created. So they're non-existent.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy,
So I mean, just really back to the comments we had about offering courses makes sure available. So that program, I had a lot of emails over the summer from a few parents. So we have one school that offers IB. Parents have no other option. They want to take economics as a 2-semester course. And they really have no option if it's not offered at St. Thomas. They have to go to a public school. So I'm just wondering, like, was there any accommodation we could have made there? Because, you know, we promote this program, and I think we have a responsibility to make sure the courses are offered. And there's no choice. So they had to end up taking physics, and their student wants to do economics. Do we have any kind of feedback on that?
Good question. I'll pass this on to
I've got something to say, but I'll go to Superintendent Kroll on this.
Superintendent Kroll.
Sure. And I wasn't specifically involved with St. Thomas Aquinas last year, but I did have a previous role as IP coordinator at St. Thomas Aquinas. Every year we had to make decisions about which courses would run and which courses didn't run based on which student interest was. And at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to the bottom line as well as to the student to make sure that we can offer courses that students want, but also that make fiscal sense. So every year the schools offering those specialized programs have to make those choices, those difficult choices, and try to work with students if they're not able to offer courses to at least provide another option so they can get their IB diploma in this case. But we, unfortunately, when we talk about the program, we talk about what typically we offer. And I can tell you that year over year with IB, the course offerings have to change based on what students are interested in. So we try to offer as many options as possible for students to provide sort of courses that they're interested in, but also that are most likely to be successful in getting their diploma.
Thank you, Superintendent Kroll. Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. You have had 2 questions. Do you have any further question?
Yes.
Okay.
So regarding PA days, obviously there's a lot in there about the new Better Outcomes Act. So one of them I was reading, which our website linked to for parents, did give a description details. It mentions that on August 15th, we have to give a general outline of the activities to be conducted on the PA days identified on our calendar. Just wondering if there's any comments. I assume we provided that to the ministry because it was due 2 weeks ago. And could that information be shared with trustees?
So Director Klein did respond and confirmed in an email that the ministry, the information was shared. It's not optional. It's mandated by the ministry. So when you're mandated, you do it. So this is just one of the instances where our board has to report. Every department across our system does reporting to the ministry all the time, and it's mandated. So if the Board of Trustees are to be informed every time a report goes to, again, it's operational. Every time a report goes to the ministry, if the Board of Trustees need to be informed about it, I don't think it's accurate and don't think it's necessary. But again, if it does not go to the does not go to the ministry, then I think trustees should be concerned. But again, let me pass this on to Director Klein to clarify this.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at Superintendent Dinolfo, but that was, again, in the remarkable time we afforded the ministry of that. And so that was done. And I'm not sure if there's any more beyond that. We got a response in terms of a general answer, a general okay. And we look forward to the next PA day as well. And that came from our regional officer. But Superintendent Dinolfo, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Kennedy, so what parents received and what's on the school board's website is exactly what is required for us to actually share with parents. And so that is what was shared with the Ministry of Education, which was acknowledged in August and then confirmed today that we met all the requirements for the first PA day.
Thank you, Trustee.
Sorry, that wasn't really my question. My question was about the August 15th deadline. We have to provide a general outline of the activities to be conducted on our professional activity days identified on our calendar. So we did provide this to the ministry. Can trustees have a copy of the general outline of the activities that was provided to the ministry?
Through you, Mr. Chair. we've provided the first PA day. So that's what's different. What we have to do is, so the next PA day, which is our Faith Day, at the beginning of October, we have until September 22nd to share with parents and post that on the to the ministry. So that's what's different this year. Whereas before we submitted all the PA day topics in one submission when we did school year calendar. That changed with the amendment. So we have 14 days before PA day to submit to the ministry what it is that the topics and how it's being delivered, meeting the criteria that the ministry has set out.
Trustee Karen, I'm not understanding your question. So you are looking for an acknowledgement from the ministry that item was done?
So like I'm just reading it here. It says right on here, the on or before August 15th, a general outline of the activities to be conducted on the professional activity days identified in the calendar will be shared with the minister. So I know we did the one, and I know there's a 14-day. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about the general outline for the full year, which was due on August 15th. I assume we submitted that to the ministry. Can we get a copy of that general outline? Not the one that happened today, the overall PA days. I think there's 7 of them, thereabouts.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, we did submit that. That was months ago. So when we submitted school year calendar, we actually identified those topics. What changed was when the ministry came back with July 28th communication, they actually tweaked some of the topics. So we do have that outline. And I do believe we did actually share that when we shared the school year calendar in, I believe it was March, end of March, beginning of April. So we still have that outline of that. So I can share that with trustees.
Once again, I would just add that this is not something we are doing new right now. This has been done every year. We submit a calendar, we submit the PD days to the ministry every single year. And it's a standard protocol and staff knows it. And really, this is operational as far as we are concerned as trustees. Okay, so we got to be cognizant about that. It's operational items in this policy. Trustee Kennedy, you have your mic on. Yes. You have hand up. You have any further questions?
Yes. So one of the other...
I'm going to take one more question. It's almost an hour since we are on this topic. I'll take another question and then we'll move on.
So one of the other topics regarding PA days they mentioned in the new act is that a description of the material to be covered. So sorry, let me take a step back. Each detailed summary and updated detailed summary shall be prepared in the manner required by the minister and shall include the following items. So I did see that we did post a lot of things on the website: the date, the timing, the name of the school, or the topics. But it also mentioned a description of the material to be covered, which I see that we did. But it says, including the names and titles of persons presenting or delivering the material. Including the names and titles of persons presenting or delivering the material. And on our website, we say presenter are school administrators. So not the names, not the titles. Is that because we believe that's only for third-party presenters, or is that something that we have to disclose given what it says directly in the act?
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. I think I'm going to take some help from Ms. Swindon. There was an email which came to me as chair on July 28th, 2023 at 4:56 p.m., which was circulated by me to all the trustees on July 31st at 8:47 a.m. That email contained 3 attachments. Okay, the first was the better school outcomes, which is there in the package, which we are going to talk about later. The second one was student achievement plan framework, and the third one was the implementation guide and FAQ for PAD. And I've sent this document to all trustees on July 31st, 2023. Now that document, implementation guide and FAQ, clearly outlines what the board should be doing. It's really operational and procedural in nature. I've sent it to Ms. Swindon. Could you share it on the screen? Or Elizabeth? Now that document is very clear, and I've sent it to all trustees. I'm hoping that all trustees have read that document. It specifies profession. It's very detailed, and it explains the professional activity days, posting guidelines, and implementation guidelines. The second point over there talks about requirements for posting PAD, and it's exactly what you stated. Put in the name and topic and who's going to be delivering that. Moving further down on page 3, if we can zoom into the screen. On page 3, it also gives exemplars of what is acceptable. So can we just zoom in the screen to page 3, acceptable level of detail there. And it's given example 1 and example 2. And if you look under presenters, facilitators, it talks about what details should go in there. These are good examples. And this is exactly what we have done in our board. And if you go further down, it gives bad examples of what not expected from the school board. Okay, and that's on page 4. So I believe with the timelines that we have received this and the timelines that we have implemented, our staff have done a fantastic job in turning around and getting this done. And there's a disclaimer here saying that this is the first year of implementation, so please do it as fast as possible. We have done that. We have really turned this around within a month, and our staff has worked very hard over the summer. So this document is very clear, and we have followed those guidelines to the letter. So Director Klein, would you like to add on to this?
Thank you, Chair. I first of all, thank you for that, because I think that does give a clear example of what is acceptable by the ministry and what is not. The ministry is aware of what our plan was for this today's PA day, and they found that that was acceptable. I think you kind of answered the question yourself, Trustee Kennedy, when you alluded to the fact that to have the names of 100 principals written out in terms of their full name and their role maybe wasn't what was thought of by the ministry when they did this or envisioned. But if we were to have, you know, a PA day, a faith day, let's say, where Pope Francis come and speak to us, then we would probably put his name there with all his titles as well. I think that would reflect it as well. And I'll go back and echo what the chair said. I think to have this turned around in that amount of time is phenomenal. I think the content that we had was appropriate, and it was imparted to principals in a very professional way, and the professionals, as always, along with our coordinators and other staff, led the charge admirably today.
Thank you, trustees. Once again, it's been an hour. It's been an hour since we had a discussion.
Mr. Chair, you didn't answer my question. You answered other questions.
You have one more question?
It's the same question. I mean,
okay, let's do a clarification then.
Yeah, so you mentioned other things, but I had a very simple question about, I think maybe Director Klein answered it, that it sounds like our interpretation then of the Act, because the Act says including the names and titles of persons presenting or delivering the material, is really for a third party. Is that our interpretation of the Act? Instead of listing, it sounds to me like principles presented today.
Context of having 100 people deliver, we were not going to be writing down the name of every person.
Okay.
Right.
And so, and then lastly, it does mention too that the titles of any resources that will be used should be part of the detailed analysis. Did we have any resources that were used on the publication information for that? Because that's item number 6 in the Act. Were there any resources that, I think the whole part of this Act is for transparency, so parents can see what is being discussed and what materials are being shared. So did we have any resources? Because that's an item number 6.
I believe the resources were noted too, but I'll turn it over to Superintendent Dinolfo.
Superintendent Dinolfo?
Well, this isn't for.
Thank you. Through you,
oh,
Mr.
This is an
That's just an example from the ministry. Oh, okay. Well, you're looking.
Okay, Superintendent Dinolfo.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Kennedy, on the notice that we sent to the ministry, we identified the new language curriculum, especially for and the mathematics curriculum for the resources that we were doing for that portion, and then the mental health lessons that are being done in grade 7 and 8. So the resources that the Ministry of Education has identified that we're sharing, that's the PD that we had to focus on. Okay, and then again, everything was rooted in our faith. We started with year 2 of our new theological theme. That's what was rooted, how we did our PA day, and on the mental health and well-being of our students, and then making sure we've taken care of them so we can get deeper into the learning through the language and math curriculum.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Thank you, Superintendent Dinolfo. We had a discussion of OR&R on the back to school. Thank you, Director Klein, for your presentation, and thanks to the senior staff for the wonderful work they have done all summer long. We shall now move on to our next order of business, which is delegations. We do not have delegations tonight. Our next order of business is consent agenda item. Item 6.11 has been removed from this consent agenda. So is item 6.2.3. And same as 6.2.4. So we have only a couple of noted items. We do not need to discuss that. We will continue with our next order of business is, which is item number 7, approval of minutes. Item number 7 is minutes of the June 2023 regular board meetings. Are there any errors, additions, or deletions to this minutes? This item was requested by Trustee Carabella to be removed from the consent agenda. So are there any errors, additions, or deletions to these minutes? Trustee Carabella, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I asked to remove this item from the agenda. So going over the minutes, I noticed there was.
Can I ask the minutes to be put up?
Yes.
Sorry. Can we put up the minutes? Sorry, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You can advance to item 9.4 and also then later 9.5. But both of these items, I had moved amendments and they were moved and seconded. On the first one, 9.4, it was voted on and then we moved on, but the amendment is not shown. And also in 9.5, I moved an amendment to the policy and it was seconded. And then later on, it was forwarded, a motion was forwarded to forward that to the policy meeting. So again, it does not show what the amendment is. So that's an, it's missing that. And I think that
clarification, Trustee Carabella, was that amendment moved and seconded?
Yes, the first one was moved and seconded, and we had a particular vote as it shows here. It says who was in favor and who was opposed of the amendment, but it doesn't say what the amendment was. And in 9.5, it was moved and seconded. We had discussion and questions, and that was the one, the amendment asking to not allow sexually explicit materials in our libraries. And it doesn't show that wording. It doesn't show that in the minutes. And I think it has to show it. This is my first time in 10 years I've seen that an amendment is not being written out.
Okay, so Trustee Carabella, there are two things we can do. We could go back, revisit this, and bring this minutes to the next board meeting. Is that what trustees are okay with? Is okay with that? Elizabeth, we can revisit that. Okay, so we shall revisit this and come back to the next board meeting with this. We shall now move on to, sorry, something more in that?
I do have one more.
Yeah.
Because I'm realizing now, because the other thing I took out of the, maybe if I discuss it now or later, but I also think that on the minutes for the open question period, it just says, several questions were submitted. Each question was allotted 2 minutes for an answer. But our previous practice is to actually write out the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. So I had a little peek at the June 20th board meeting, and there were about 5 or 6 questions that were asked, and I was expecting to see them in the minutes. So I think that could be something
that I can clarify with you right now. Yeah. Okay, so the contents of minutes of bylaw 15.3 talks about what should be in the minutes. It does not talk about what you say and what you do there. What action you take is recorded in the minutes. So bylaw 15.3, contents of minutes, the name of the meeting, the date of the meeting, that's all there, disclosed interest. The resolutions, last bullet, the resolutions and recommendations adopted by the board, that should be there. So what we say and do is never reflected in the minutes, but what action we take as a board, that's always reflected in the minutes. Go ahead.
True, but yeah. Our bylaw for open question period says that copies of any written responses to a question will be provided to trustees and added to the minutes of a subsequent meeting. And our past experience has been, I brought a sample of October the 4th, 2022. There were also like 5 or 6 questions, and they were all written out with the responses, which helps parents who are asked the questions to go back and see it. So I think it should be there.
So Trustee Carabella, if the question is not answered at that board meeting, then a written response will be provided to the questionnaire, and the answer will be provided in the bylaws. Those questions that have been answered will not be in your minutes.
Well, we've done differently in the past.
But that's how the bylaws are written.
So to that particular point, the correspondence in this board's meeting for the open question period, then that should be in the minutes. The response to Miss Judy Clifford.
Right. So 13.5 response. The chair will attempt to provide a response or direct questions to another trustee or the director of education. If no immediate response can be given, a response will be communicated to the questioner at the earliest possible date. Copies of any written response to a question will be provided to a trustee and added to the minutes of a subsequent meeting. So only questions which are not answered will be provided a written response and put into the minutes. So those questions that have been answered will not be in the minutes. Does it answer your question?
Well, in that, then in the minutes, we should have the response to Mrs. Clifford in the minutes. It's different to have something in the minutes than to have it just on the agenda.
So you're talking about the next item which we have pulled out from.
Yeah, so we can either discuss it now because I think it belongs in the minutes.
So that, yeah. So that item was not responded during the minutes. That's the reason why a written response was provided to that individual, and it's in the package. Are we on the same page?
No.
Okay, so let's.
That's okay.
So you're talking about the response to an open question period, which is further down, right?
Yeah. So, because that is, to explain that, you wrote to her the answer.
Right.
And first of all, I checked my emails, and trustees, I didn't receive it on the date it was sent to her as a response. And the answer, because it was this part that says copies of any written responses to a question will be provided to trustees and added to the minutes of a subsequent meeting.
Correct.
So this has not been added to the minutes of the June 20th board meeting. It's been added to the agenda of September the 5th. That's what
okay.
I'm saying.
But the bylaws also say it will be added to a subsequent board meeting. Am I right?
Yes, so this is the first subsequent board meeting since they requested things June 6th.
So it's valid to be here.
So it should be in the minutes.
You're right. You're right. Trustee Carabella is right. So we shall be revisiting the minutes. So Elizabeth, please note that Trustee Carabella is very much in order. So the correspondence needs to be in the minutes. Thank you for pointing out, Trustee Carabella.
Okay, thank you.
We went the long route, but we got to the same point.
For your patience.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, are we done with this item, or Trustee Kennedy, are you on the same item, 7.1? Okay, we shall get to that. That's our next order of business, is business arising from previous meetings. We are not speaking about that because that has been the consent agenda. That's part of the consent agenda. We agreed not to take item 8 out. 8.1, summary of outstanding items. Is that what you're talking about? We are further down. Yes, 8.1 is summary of outstanding items from previous meetings. No, we shall come to that. So our next item is action items. There are no action items. Item number 10, staff reports. There are no staff reports. Next order of business is information item 11.1, student trustee update. Student trustees, please present your report. Who goes first? Trustee Chua, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we begin, I actually want to introduce my new student trustees. If you all haven't already met them already, if whoever wants to go first.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here. I'm Lauren McGuire, and I attend St. Ignatius of Loyola Catholic Secondary School, and I'm in grade 11. I'm so excited to be in this role and to be working with you all this year. I've seen the incredible role that student trustees play in improving our education system, and it's such an honor to be a part of this. I really wanted to be a part of this role for many reasons. I think it's a great way to take on leadership, to collaborate with staff, trustees, and students to create different initiatives to further our board. I also too appreciate the way this role allows me to promote equity and student voice and to uplift the voices of students of different diverse backgrounds. And also too, as a Catholic, I'm called to serve others, and I really enjoy the ability to serve students in this role. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dia Vipu, and I am the Burlington Student Trustee. I'm in grade 11, and I go to Assumption Catholic Secondary School. I'm so honored and grateful to be part of this community, to be a student trustee representing many students across the board. And yeah, these past 2 years, I've been working in Senate, and I've seen how hard student trustees have been working to keep the Senate successful, and to also just represent all those students, because it's definitely not an easy job. So yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. My intro will not be as eloquently said, but I'm back. I'm so excited to be here for a second year. Most of you know me, but hello, I'm Ariana, North Halton student trustee, and I'm back for a second year. So excited to see what we can accomplish going into grade 12. Very terrified, but yeah, super excited. So now on to our report. So I'll be taking on the achieving section. So as the 2023 to 2024 school year opens up tomorrow for the very first time, many of our students, especially our senior students entering their grade 12 year, are expressing their concern about academics and the continued impact the pandemic has on them. Our students need continuous academic and adequate mental health support from professionals within our schools, properly tailored to especially help students a part of minority groups. Many of our students are losing their love for learning, honestly, and feeling very scared for what's to come. So to rekindle the passion for education for our students, we hope that our teachers and our administration can lead with empathy in our schools to support and uplift our students during this upcoming school year.
As for our believing section, we've had our summer break, and our staff and students are really excited to be in the classroom tomorrow to build a faith-based community with one another. We can see our chaplaincy staff and faith-based groups across our secondary schools have been working hard, getting ready to welcome our students during these first few weeks of our new school year, just to ensure that our school environments stay a safe and inclusive space where all students feel represented, where they can express themselves, and where they feel heard within faith.
As for the belonging part of the report, this September, many new grade 9 students will be joining our HCDSB secondary school family. Each of our school senior mentorship and student council teams have set up various grade 9 orientations in the past week to help hype up our grade 9 students and get them excited for this new chapter of life in high school. These events help to create safe spaces for our grade 9 students while fostering cross-grade relationships with one another that will flourish across our school environments throughout this year. Additionally, we have also hosted a international student orientation that happened on August 31st at St. Thomas Aquinas, and it was successful in making sure that international students felt comfortable on their first day of school and that they felt connected to their HCDSB community. Thank you.
Thank you, student trustees. Trustees, do we have questions for students? I see Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question under achieving. So it looks like under the new Act 2, there's a big a push to help with mental health for students. And I noticed in our budget too, Superintendent Lofts had mentioned over the summer, we had funding to help students. So it didn't end in June and then start again in September, which seems like a great improvement. And then when the beginning of the achieving section where it says, especially our senior students entering grade 12 are expressing their concerns about academics and continued impact has on them. They need continuous academic and adequate mental health. I'm just wondering, are you finding this, Trustee Shua, from, is it like the particular school that you're in, or do we have any like data on, is it widespread across all high schools? is there a way that we can narrow this down and find ways to support students who are experiencing, who maybe need some more support?
Trustee McGuire, do you want to take a shot at it first? Since you spoke about the achieving, who spoke about achieving? Oh,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So these are responses from students that are just coming to each of us, all of the student trustees individually, from each of the different regions. I know I'm talking from the North Halton perspective. I know especially our BR students have been coming to me, most importantly about being stressed for senior year and applying to universities and that sort of thing. We do not have like hard data. All of this is just from students who have come and reached out to us. But I will refer back to our student census, which showed some statistics about student mental health. Of course, that was during the year, but there is slightly a higher peak, I would say, currently, because we are going back to school and it is scary, to enter a new year that matters so much, especially, for setting yourself up for the future of your life.
Thank you, Trustee Chua. I see no other hands up. So, student trustees, thank you so much for your report. Really appreciate hearing student voice at the table. We shall move on to next item, which is 11.2, OCSTA verbal update. Trustee Ohan Chanada.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a very quick verbal update that we do have the Oxter regional meetings. We are in the central region. So that includes Brant, Halderman, Norfolk, Dufferin, Peel, Durham, Halton, Hamilton, Wentworth, Niagara, Toronto, and York. That's coming up on Monday, September the 18th, and I look forward to bringing a fulsome report after that meeting at our next scheduled board meeting. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Ohan Chanada. And I will emphasize with trustees, and I sent all trustees an email inviting everybody to please make sure we attend these events. This is very important for us. It's learning for trustees, trying to understand the bigger picture in Ontario, and it's professional development for trustees too. And in full transparency, we are going to be putting on our board website in the trustees section the sessions that we have, the OCSTA sessions that we have, the trustees attend that, and the content. So it's full transparency, and I'm hoping to have all trustees attend that session. Thank you, Trustee.
I think it's just important to note, though, Mr. Chair, that some of us do have commitments at work. We do have, so I don't think it's a lack of people wanting to attend or participate. The reality is it's a juggling act, and I know for one, I try not to miss any of these things, but unfortunately, we do have other responsibilities. So I think we need to be cognizant of that.
So it's an encouragement to everybody to please participate. We need HCDSB name in OCSTA needs to be out there, and happy to have everybody there. So once again, we shall continue with our agenda. Next order of business is miscellaneous information, which we have none, and then correspondence. Item 13.2, the Better Schools and Student Outcome Act 2023 with amended attachments. It is in correspondence in our package, and Trustee Kennedy has requested that it be removed out. So the correspondence is in our package for everybody's information. Trustee Kennedy, do you want to speak to this? It's correspondence. We're not going to have a discussion or debate, but I'll give, since you asked to remove it, I'm going to give you an.
Can I ask a general question?
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Thanks. So it seems like a really big change and big deal. So just want to know, like they mentioned a little bit about trying to do some work over the summer. The timing was not very, doesn't sound like it was great at the end of July, but it does mention about just a couple of things like lifting standards and student outcomes in our schools. So like just on that one, I think it's math, reading and writing. Do we have some maybe plans in place, and maybe they're coming to be shared with the trustees, but have there some work been developed on getting that to fruition?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good question, and I think actually having this have a bit of a spotlight on it is good. Certainly, this has a big impact. Timing is everything. Having it come in the middle of July wasn't ideal, but again, I think the bright side of this, Trustee Kennedy, is the response that we had from our staff regarding this. So when we met with our principals and vice principals last week for 2 days, this was, let's say, the backdrop to a lot of what we were talking about. The temptation was to address it directly as this, maybe kind of dull written ministry memo. and yet it pervaded everything else we spoke about. Because the fact of the matter is, we want to be focusing on numeracy achievement. We want to be looking at early reading and literacy. The fact of the matter is that those are equity issues, by the way, in terms of, you might not see equity with a capital E in a lot of what the ministry is putting out now, but this is an issue of equity. This is an issue of righting wrongs. So part of that is the student achievement plan as well, which has gone through 3 or 4 iterations and acronyms, but arose by any other name. This is really a board improvement plan and equity plan that was sort of in the works for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm very excited that we have, in terms of our senior leaders, a team that is going to be able to take this and come up with a plan, continue a plan to ensure that that improvement is met, that raising achievement, narrowing gaps, addressing those who have been marginalized and have been whose pathways perhaps have been limited because of not being able to meet certain standards is there. We have that ahead of us in terms of our, and I also think that the fact that this is well timed with our MYSP as well, is you like to see some form of cross-pollination or alignment with them. I'll look to some of my staff over here to see. I just think this was bang on what we were dealing with when it came to it, because we are addressing pathways. Superintendent Del Sordo is looking in terms of technology and OEAP and work we're doing there. We're looking at e-learning. We're looking at numeracy with Superintendent Strippick, and who's working now with other colleagues around the province of Ontario. That too has been moving forward from the province, perhaps not as quickly as we would like, but I think as a province we're moving forward in that as well, and Superintendent Strippick has been right in the middle of that. And Superintendent Crowell, I think, might be able to give a little sense of what other endeavors we've been up to that do reflect this. So thank you for asking.
Sure, and through you, Mr. Chair, just to respond, part of the work that schools were engaged in today was directly around the student action plan. So, you know, some of these things are new to be reported on by schools and boards. So we want to make sure that principals and ultimately educators know that we're going to be asked to report on these things. So in our secondary schools, we ask them to start thinking about barriers for student success in the afternoon, because those things are ultimately what affect credit accumulation. In our elementary schools, we spent the day, half day, looking at the new literacy curriculum. We had a writing team working diligently through the summer, made up of very talented educators who've been directly working on the curriculum, some of them, to provide board-specific resources to all of our schools. So we're not waiting. We weren't waiting for this memo, and we're definitely committed to as the raising achievement, and that work has been ongoing through the summer, and will continue diligently throughout the year. And we'll be happy to bring more updates, and happy this curriculum, student success, spec ed, program services to bring more updates or more presentations as much as trustees want.
Thank you, Director Klein and Superintendent Crow and Trustee Kennedy for the question on correspondence. I think we have the answers, and we look forward to more information. Our next order of business is open question period, and I think Trustee Carabella, we have dealt with this item. Thank you. Director Klein, have any questions been submitted for open question?
No, they have not.
Thank you, Director Klein. We shall now move on to the in-camera item. Trustees, an item just came to my attention that there is a verbal update for trustees in camera. So if you'd be kind enough to go back into camera and deal with that one item, should be a quick item, but it's an update. So may I have a motion to move in camera?
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Business arriving from previous meetings. I think you mentioned we would come back to that.
We did not remove that item from the consent agenda.
Ask a question about that.
We have passed that stage, not right now.
So will we ever get back to that stage?
We'll get back to that stage at the next board meeting. Or in the meantime, if you have a question on that, please feel free to write to Director Klein and staff. They will answer it after the board meeting.
I just have a question. Well,
we cannot go to that point. We have passed that stage. It's just, but feel free to write to staff. Feel free to write to Director Klein, and you'll get your response. Okay, sorry. Thank you. We shall now move in camera. May I have a motion to move in camera?
I'll move. Kelly.
Trustee Kelly. Sorry. Looking for a seconder? Seconded by Vice Chair Agnew. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Trustee Saunders opposed? I'll take it to a recorded vote. So we are voting to go in camera, item 15. Trustee Agnew? Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Saunders?
Opposed.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Deepu?
In favor.
Trustee McGuire?
Favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell? Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee Ohonchanara?
In favor.
So we have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention, motion carries. We shall now move into camera. Can we have the doors locked in the recording? So trustees, please sign out and go to the in-camera login, please.